Hey guys. Alright, so I was going to do, and probably still will do, some Royal Rumble thoughts before the pay-per-view happens. I don't want to call them predictions because I don't want to follow that format, but I probably still will do some general thoughts on how things might go, or how I feel they should go, or things of that nature. I will do that tomorrow before the pay-per-view, so stay tuned for that. But for now, I just wanted to do a response to Spinnernet's latest vid, in which he talked about the blood thing in WWE and how it just doesn't make any sense next to all the violence that we already see in the WWE already. And I agree. I was thinking about doing this video a few weeks ago, but I ultimately decided I just got distracted from it. Just had other videos I wanted to do, and I just put it to the side. But now that I see that Spinnernet has done this video, not the exact same video that I wanted to do, but just around the same topic, so I decided, okay, I will do this as a response to his video and, talk about the things that I wanted to talk about. So let's get started. First of all, I should probably say that, I support WWE as PG. I think that's something they had to do after the Benoit thing. I just think, it's one thing if wrestlers are dying, but if they are putting other people in harm's way, then, something has got to give. Something has got to change, because wrestling cannot be culturally acceptable when people are dying and killing other people. So something had to change, and I think toning down the product a little bit, it had to be done. It's unfortunate, but it had to be done. So there you go. I just think the WWE being PG is the safe option right now after the Benoit thing, and there you go on that. But the blood thing does kind of bother me, because I just cannot fathom how Vince McMahon cannot think that blood can help in certain situations, because it definitely can't help in certain situations, and we have seen that throughout the history of the professional wrestling business. And I would like to have my example, not the classic example, because the classic example is of course Bret Hart and Steve Austin at WrestleMania 13, on how blood can really help the psychology behind a match and behind somebody's character. But my example is of the first WWF pay-per-view that I saw. I'm not going to call it the first. I'm going to say first pay-per-view, even though I had two WrestleManias, not two WrestleManias, a WrestleMania and another pay-per-view on home video before this. But they were long past pay-per-views, so I count this as my first pay-per-view because I was watching it around the time that it happened. Fully Loaded 2000. That was my first pay-per-view, the pay-per-view that I became a wrestling fan on full time. And I'll always remember watching this for the first time because of one match, and that match is of course Chris Jericho versus Triple H in the Last Man Standing. I love this match. I love this match in so many different ways, and it's one of my favorite matches to this day because it was just perfect on so many levels. The story being told that Jericho had damaged ribs and Triple H was working them over. He was the heel. He was dominant. He just made you want to see Jericho come back. And when Jericho did come back, even to this day, I remember this to this day. And even though I've probably seen more brutal chair shots since then, I still remember this as a child. This was larger than life to me. The chair shot that Jericho struck with to make his comeback, it was just amazing to me at the time. And Triple H had a wonderful blade job to go with it to really sell it. And that match just went there. From there, Jericho's comeback was very, very believable. And at the end, it didn't matter if Triple H won, because he just got up in time for the count and then he fell right back down. So it really didn't matter if Jericho did not win, because Triple H was the man in 2000. Whatever you feel about him now, Triple H was the man in 2000. An amazing heel. He was just it was just one of the best single years that a wrestler can have. Triple H in 2000, he was the man. So I don't really mind that Triple H won that match. It was a great match, and I love that match. And I think that is a great example of how blood can really help the psychology of a match, because Jericho's comeback was so believable after he made that chair shot, that everything he did after that, just you could really believe that he belonged in the ring with Triple H. Obviously I didn't think of it like this back 10 years ago, but looking back at it now, that's definitely how everything appeared. Everything just felt right. And you can make the example of Bret Hart and Steve Austin at WrestleMania 13, because if you were around to see that, that was a great example also of how Steve Austin, Steve Austin will always be known as the badass face, and the face that doesn't need no sympathy, nothing, no help from anybody. He just did his own thing, and he was the man, he was the badass face, and he remains the biggest face based on that persona. But at WrestleMania 13, he was the sympathetic face because he was trapped in Bret Hart's sharpshooter, bleeding so hard, and no one could help him, and the fans just felt sympathy for him then. For just that time, he was the sympathetic face, and you know what? I love the power of a sympathetic face. I think faces like Steve Austin have their place. They have their place because obviously Steve Austin remains the biggest name. I don't know if you would call him the biggest name. Hogan's probably the bigger name, but he was the badass face, and he got his impact based off that persona. But sometimes sympathetic faces do work. You can do really work, and you might care about if they win a match more. When you really have a heartache for a certain superstar, you really want them to see them win, probably more than someone like Steve Austin, who was just so tough and in your face that even if he lost, you were like, he's definitely going to win it back. But with a sympathetic face, you just really felt that you wanted him to win, and you really felt it when he lost. I'm getting sidetracked here, but that's how I feel. That's how I feel that Steve Austin came off in this match and why it was so effective. And it just really blows my mind how Vince McMahon can feel that he can just censor blood entirely now when he sees that the effect it can have in certain situations. Now, I'm not suggesting that blood can be the saving grace of any match, because if blood is the only dramatic element of a match, then something's wrong. It has to have other elements. That last man standing match had a lot more things to it besides Triple H bleeding. I'll say that. Blood cannot be the only good thing about a match. There needs to be other elements to it. But even back in the 90s, even back in the early to mid 90s, when there was a time, I don't remember the exact years, of course, but I remember reading this, that blood was outlawed in the WWE for a time in the early to mid 90s, and despite that, if it actually happened, by accident, of course, it would be allowed. It would be allowed to remain. And in Bret Hart's book, I remember reading this in Bret Hart's book at WrestleMania 8 when he was in the Intercontinental title match with Roddy Piper. He and Piper conspired among themselves. I'm going to use the word conspired, even though it sounds like a dirty word in an extent. But they conspired for Bret Hart to bleed in this match because it was needed for the drama of the match and to seal the show. And Bret Hart was a total pro, in his own words, in that he made the blood look accidental. So he got away with that, and he didn't get any trouble for it. But then, later that night, I don't know if this is true, I have not seen this WrestleMania, and I'm just basing this off Bret Hart's word, and when it comes to this subject, I kind of have a hard time believing him on this, but Ric Flair and Randy Savage, who went on later that night, they also did the same thing. They agreed to get blood as well. And apparently Flair made it so obvious that he did it on purpose that he was fined later on $500 for drawing blood. I don't know if that's true because Flair is a very consistent blader. He does it a lot. He did it a lot in his time, so I kind of find it hard to believe that he couldn't achieve the effect he wanted when he did it. But that's what Bret Hart says, and but the thing to note from that story is, both times, whether it was accidental or seen to be intentional right away, neither of them were cleaned up by a doctor. A doctor did not come out to clean up both those guys. They were allowed to bleed. For better or worse, they were allowed to bleed, and it probably had the effect that they wanted to get from it. And now, in this decade, in this time, you can't even bleed accidentally because a doctor will come by and clean it up. So what has changed? What has changed in Vince McMahon's mind that he cannot realize what the past has taught him about the psychology behind bleeding? Because I think in certain situations it can really work. It can really help what you're trying to achieve with a match or with a certain character. So what has changed in the mind of Vince McMahon? Because I don't know how these ratings work in the United States. I don't know if PG as a rating has got more restrictive in America over the years because it's a different system in all different countries. So I don't know, but if I don't think things have changed, I don't think it would change that much. So you know what has happened. What has happened in the mind of Vince McMahon that he thinks that you know being PG requires him also to outlaw blood, even in cases when it would work. I don't get it. I don't think I will ever get it. But you know, what are you going to do about it? It just blows my mind, to be honest. So that's this video over with. I just wanted to do this as a response to Spinnernet because this is a video that I wanted to do for a while. So there we go. I'm out. Later.